Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Samantha and I'm on a surrogacy journey to help a couple bring their baby into this world, and we are 12 weeks. I don't know if you can see my little belly. And it's been a crazy, exciting, wild journey, and we've loved sharing it with all of you. One of the biggest questions we get asked daily on every social media platform is, how do I become a surrogate? How do I get started? I'd love to help someone in this way. And today's video is gonna be all about that. I'm gonna share all the tips that I have, all the insight. I'm gonna talk to you about the requirements needed to become a surrogate, which direction to go, whether you're choosing an independent route or an agency route, and what the process kind of looks like. So if you have questions about how to become a surrogate, this is the episode for you. Stick around. Okay, bear with me, I had to change locations because the kids are home and I tried to sneak away to a quiet space to record this, but let's do this. If you're no stranger to our platform, you'll realize that today's video is gonna be a little bit more informative and less vlog style, but I feel like when talking about a topic like this, I want to just give you all the information I can and have a place to send people who are commenting and messaging us daily, really requesting like good key information. And before I go further, I really wanna mention that what I share today is based off of what I've learned from researching and from our own experience. We started pursuing surrogacy in the fall of 2018, started praying about it in the summer of 2018. And so through the years of researching about it and then also being a part and being on a surrogacy journey, we have learned so much. And so I do feel like we have a lot of insight to share based off of our experience. But I always recommend you do your own research. You really think about it, pray about it, weigh out the options, the pros and cons to see if it is right for you. The first thing to think about is, are you done having kids? Pregnancy and labor can be really complicating. And if something happens major in your journey and it prevents you from having kids, that could really affect you for years to come, your marriage, your family, if you planned on having more. That's not to say that some people don't go and have more children after being a surrogate, but it's just something to think about before you get started. And the second thing is, after you decide you're done having kids and you want to become a surrogate, is, do you meet the requirements? A lot that I'm going to reference today is from a website called Surrogate.com. It has great information. It's a place that I went to when I first got started and was trying to learn as much as I could. And so I'm going to reference a lot from there, but then also from our own experience. So when it comes to the requirements to become a surrogate, some of them you may not understand, but they're there for a reason. And so here we go. Typically, a surrogate is 21 to 45 years old. That's just the age range where typically you see people getting pregnant and delivering babies. And so when someone's looking for a surrogate, that's the range that they look for. Sometimes if it's an agency, they will have their own standards and their own requirements, and it may be less than 45. 45 is actually pretty high to what I've seen. I want to say 40, 41 is what I usually see. A healthy BMI of 30 or less, this just shows the agency, the intended parents, that you are in a healthy state and you are able to get pregnant and labor in a healthy way. And so, if you have to do some exercise, do some healthy eating to get your body to the point where you can be the most ready for a surrogacy journey. The next thing is no smoking or illicit drugs. I have seen where if you have smoked in the past, as long as it was within a certain amount of months, then that's okay. But I've also seen from agencies to where if you've had any drug use at all, you do not meet the requirements and they won't accept you because you've had that in the past. So again, it just depends, and different agencies will have different requirements. No government assistance or financial assistance. You'll see this commonly. Just they want to make sure you are well taken care of financially, you're stable, you have a stable home, because a surrogacy journey is very complicated, it's very intense, there's a lot of moving parts, and so having to worry about a financial state in your own home is kind of tough at times to do both of them. Have at least one prior pregnancy and full-term healthy delivery. A lot of times people will message and say, hey, I don't have any kids of my own, but I would love to help someone in this way. You have to have at least one birth. If you think about it, doctors need records to look back on to see if you would be a good candidate. They want to see how your pregnancy was. Did you have any complications, or were you high risk? They want to know how your labor went, because they don't want to start an intended parent on this journey if it's just going to lead to complications in the end. They want to have the most successful opportunity possible with a healthy surrogate, healthy pregnancies and labors, good high-grade embryo, so that the end result is bringing home a baby for the parents. with having at least one previous successful pregnancy. A lot of times they'll say no more than 5 vaginal births or no more than 3 cesarean sections. So just because you've had a C-section doesn't mean you can't be a surrogate and do a VBAC or even do a C-section. And so that, be raising your children in your own home, no felony convictions, be free of STDs for at least 12 months, have no history of postpartum depression, and be off of antidepressants or anti-anxiety meds for at least 12 months. So just because you've had bouts of anxiety and depression doesn't mean you're not able to be a surrogate, but making sure you've been off of those meds for a safe period of time, it's out of your system, and you're at a better place emotionally and psychologically to be prepared for this journey. This journey is a lot. It's time consuming, it's emotional, it's hard on our bodies, it's hard on our families, our marriage, and so you want to be at the best place mentally and be prepared for this journey that you can be. And so being off of those meds is definitely important. You want to wait at least 12 months after a tattoo or a piercing. This just helps prevent bacteria from affecting your pregnancy. And so waiting those 12 months allows that if something happened and you got an infection or whatever, it wouldn't affect your pregnancy. So being or not having one for the prior 12 months. You definitely need to be able to travel for appointments. Our first journey, if you've followed us at all, you saw that our first journey ended with our intended parents getting pregnant naturally, but we had to drive 3 hours away for our appointments to their fertility doctor. Our current journey, our fertility doctor was in New York, and so we had to travel there just the one time for a transfer. We had local monitoring appointments, but having a reliable vehicle, having childcare, having people to count on so that you can make these appointments possible is really important. And at the end, just a stable lifestyle and support system. Like I said, there's a lot to this journey, and I'm so thankful just for all the family we have, all the friend support we have. Our friends have had to watch the kids sometimes. My grandparents, my mom, my sister, Dan comes to most all of my appointments, and not to mention giving me all my shots and being there for me and encouraging me and praying for me. And so having that support is definitely important. Not to say that everyone's going to agree with you. This is a new thing that not everyone does, and it's kind of different, but that's us and how we live our life and what God has called us to do. And so you may have friends or family members who don't agree with you, but make sure your key support system agrees with you, supports you, and is there for you. Okay, so now that we talked about, are you done having your own kids? Do you meet the requirements to become a surrogate? The next question that you want to ask yourself is, do I want to go the independent route or go the agency route? And it just depends. And because we've kind of been on both journeys, I want to give you my feedback of what we found from our own experience. So we first started pursuing it with an agency back in 2018. And I Googled surrogacy agency near me, and I found 3. In anything in life, whether I get a quote for the car or buy a new house, I always get 3 quotes. Not a buy house, because we have not bought a house, and that's a story for another day. Hopefully one day. But well, you get 3 quotes or 3 options. And so I looked at 3, I made calls to each 3, and one that got back to me, I really felt a connection with. I felt like we wanted to move forward right away. So I decided to move forward in that direction because I had no prior knowledge of surrogacy. I didn't know what it entailed, what it looked like, and I really wanted that guidance from an agency to help me along this journey. And when you go through an agency, basically the steps for the surrogacy journey are the same. What an agency is they're the middleman between you and the intended parents, or you and the doctor, you and the hospital. So they make a lot of the phone calls for you, a lot of the appointments, they check in on you, how you're doing, making sure you're getting your reimbursement request in, making sure you're taken care of, making sure the intended parents are taken care of. And so they're there to kind of facilitate things. So it can be very helpful. The downsides to it is more expensive for the intended parents. Typically with an agency, the compensation for a surrogate is a little bit higher. They're able to secure funds for you that they know you need, where in an independent journey, sometimes intended parents will want to cut a few fees back that may not be as needed. Not to say that it is drastically different, but it's a little bit less. And so typically you'll see an agency has a higher compensation rate for a surrogate. And so if that's a determining factor for you, then I would encourage you to pursue an agency. Some of the things that I also realized from going through an agency is we waited a lot on them to get back to us because we were waiting for an answer from the hospital, and they were the ones to call the hospital. And so we would call them, hey, have you got the call back? No, we haven't. Let's call them. Then they would get an answer, call us back. And it was just a lot of back and forth. And so we were waiting a lot because I didn't have control over the journey and I didn't know what to do. And probably the last downside that I saw was we decided we did not want to terminate. A lot of times intended parents on an IVF journey or surrogacy journey want the option to terminate because of something that could arise with the embryo. They're putting a lot of money, energy, time, and investment into this, and they want to ensure they have a baby at the end of it. I get that. But for me and the babies that I carry, and just with our beliefs, we decided we don't want to terminate. I am responsible for the actions that I do and with the life that I carry. And so we did not want to terminate. And the agency said, okay, we understand, but that's going to require a longer wait period for you to match. It may take longer. There's a high percentage of intended parents who want to be able to terminate. We were willing to wait. We made the decision that that's okay. We'll wait as long as it takes. We feel like if this is something God wants us to do, then it will happen. And if not, then that's okay. And one more thing I want to add is obviously now with COVID, there's the vaccine. And most agencies nowadays are requiring you to get the vaccine. Most clinics nowadays are requiring you to get the vaccine. But I do want to mention, if you in your heart do not feel ready to get it, it's a personal decision. We decided against it. Our fertility clinic was okay with it. Our intended parents were okay with it. And so we were thankful, and that's something that was really important to us. So if an agency is requiring you to get it and you don't want to, I don't recommend you go with them. Some agencies I have found are doing a more independent route where you have a little bit more freedom, and that's one of the options is if you choose not to get vaccinated, you can do kind of that section of the agency. So although I loved working with the agency at first because I knew nothing about surrogacy, it wasn't my favorite now being on an independent journey and seeing that side of things. But I do know that an agency is very important for those intended parents who need the direction, who need the support of a coordinator of an agency, and they're willing to pay that extra amount for that, then that's awesome. And also as a surrogate, you may have no information of surrogacy and what it entails and the steps and what you're doing, or you may have a full-time job and you have kids at home and you don't have the time to spend making the phone calls, sending the emails, and you need some help, then I recommend you go through an agency. Through my research and sitting down and talking to many agencies, I highly recommend International Surrogacy Center. They're based out of California. You don't have to live in California, but Maria, the owner, and all of her staff are so amazing. And I went there and met with them, and I wanted to know on an agency side what they do for a surrogate. And sitting in on conversations and hearing how they support their intended parents and how they support their surrogates blew my mind. It made me want to be a part of an agency because of all the care that they put into it and all they do for surrogates. So if you're looking for an agency and that's the direction you really want to go, click down below at International Surrogacy Center, reach out to Maria and her staff, let her know we sent you, and I know they will treat you so well and be excited for you to be on this journey and help out in any way they can. On an independent side, the things that I really liked on an independent journey, and a little bit of backstory if you didn't know our first journey, we matched with our first set of intended parents on Facebook. In a Facebook group, there's a Facebook group called Surrogates and IPs Match and Chat. I first joined the group, I spent a month watching what people post, reading surrogate posts, reading IPs posts to see what they were looking for, what a surrogate was desiring, to really line out what I wanted our journey to look like and what intended parents we wanted to be on this journey with. After a month of reading, I decided I'm ready to post. It felt kind of weird. It was kind of like a dating app, like, hey, I'm Sam, here's my husband, here's our kids, and I just lined out what was important to us. We are done having our own kids. We're thankful to have great pregnancies, great labors, and we would love to help a family in this way. We feel like God called us to do this, and here's some details of what we want our journey to look like. We would love to have intended parents who had faith of some sort because it's a tough journey and we want to be able to agree in prayer and support each other in that way. We desire no termination. We did not want to get the vaccine, which at this time I don't think the vaccine was there. So I didn't say that. I just said natural birth, natural labor, natural pregnancies, that we live a healthy lifestyle, we travel, and just a little bit more about us. I'll post a picture here of what I posted, but I put fun, smiley, engaging pictures of me pregnant with both kids and then me holding both kids, pictures of our family. So they really got to know us. So with an agency, you're presented different profiles to match, or you have like little blind dating match meetings. But with the group, you kind of just post it publicly and people will message you. So we had multiple people message us, and we decided on a couple that we really felt connected with, and we moved forward that direction. So with the independent journey, the difference with an agency is the only real middleman is like the fertility clinic. So our intended parents fertility clinic gave us kind of the basic steps of here's what you do, here's what comes next, and there's no middleman of the agency. So we made a lot of phone calls, we made our appointments, we did the emails. It's a little bit more work on us and the intended parents, but our intended mother was very organized, very on top of things. So I trusted her, I trusted me, and I'm also controlling in a good way. I like to have control over the things that go on in my life, and I wanted to know what was going on in my journey. I don't like waiting on people. I like to get answers fast. Like if something's waiting that doesn't need to be waiting, I will like go to the place and get the printout and fax it and email it myself, because there's no use in waiting weeks to get my birth records when it's all on the portal, you know, and you can do it yourself. So I wanted more control over the journey, and I wanted a more personal relationship. I felt like with an independent route, I could have a better connection with intended parents and have more communication. Yes, through an agency you can, but you also have the option to not be as connected or close if you don't want to. There are sometimes surrogates don't really want to have a relationship with the intended parents, and vice versa. Sometimes they just want to, you know, have their baby and go on with their lives, and that's okay. We did prefer an open relationship, and that's something that I would encourage you to decide. Do you want to be a part of the intended parent's life and the baby's life? You know, within reason. You don't want to, you know, encroach on their space as a family and their time, but celebrating milestones like birthdays and sending a Christmas gift, that's definitely something we wanted to do. This is a huge part of our life. Our kids recognize what's going on, and so we wanted for years to come to be praying for them, to be excited for them, and to be celebrating their life. And so that's something that we thought about when we started a journey, kind of what we would ask for as well. So once you decide whether to go through an agency or go the independent route, both processes are pretty much the same. There's slight differences that I'll make note of, but for the most part, right when you match, so with an independent journey, you match first, and then you start all the steps. With an agency, you typically will do a background check, you'll do an application, you'll start like a contract, you'll do a lot of those paperwork things up front, and then the very last step of all the pre-application stuff is your matching. So then once you match, you send off medical records to the fertility doctor. The doctor wants to make sure that you are a good candidate for this journey, that you're a good candidate for these intended parents. You send off your medical records to them. They give you medical record clearance. You start psych evaluations. Sometimes you have an in-person psych eval. When we went through the agency, we had to go into a psychologist's office. We sat down with her. The interview was great. She interviewed Dan over the phone because he was at work, and it was awesome. And then I had a 300-question personality test. I do not do tests whatsoever, and I passed it marginally because of the way my brain processes some questions. One of the questions was, do you get angry when people don't follow the law? And it's like, well, I'm not an angry person, so I don't get angry, but I also don't like when people don't follow the law. So, and it's like true, mostly true, false, kind of like, it was just tough. And at 300 questions, you're like, by the end of it, you're like, so according to the agency standards, I didn't get a passing grade. So I had to take it again. It was 50 questions and I still only marginally passed. So with the agency, I couldn't move forward. But with our independent journey, we had a Zoom call with a psychologist. It was a 30-minute Zoom call with Dan and I. She asked us questions, you know, some tough questions. Are you prepared for this journey? Do you have support? Then she had a phone call with our intended parents, and then we both had a phone call together with all of us. So once you get done with the psych eval, you've done your medical record clearance with the agency, you've had the background check, the application, the contract, all that. Then you move on to medical screening, which is basically a saline sonogram. They put a little saline up your uterus, make sure your uterus looks good, your ovaries look good, and that you'd be a good candidate. They also will do some blood draw there. It will seem like a lot of vials, but it's not. But that is just another step that they need to check off to say, yes, you're a good candidate. Once you get that check, you're good to go and you can start on legal. So then once you start the legal process, when you go through an agency, they usually have a lawyer in-house, or they have one that they subcontract out, and so they will find you your lawyer. With our independent journey, I think it was the clinic that referred one to us, and so the intended parents have an attorney, you have an attorney, and so everything's separate. And so usually the intended parents will draft up a contract, and then your attorney will get it. You guys will review it together, make some updates, changes, whatever, pass it off. They'll approve it, change it, update it, whatever. They sign it, you sign it, you're good. And then once the contracts are done, then you move on to escrow. So in going the independent route, that doesn't mean that things are done off the record and that they're not professional. You still have a lawyer, you still follow all the steps, you still have escrow, and I would encourage you to make sure you do, because that just protects you, that protects the intended parents. You hear horror stories, we get them all the time in our comments, like, oh, so-and-so was on a journey and they took the baby, or they didn't compensate them, and this, and it's like, well, did they do the research? Did they do the correct steps? Because yes, that can happen if you don't do the steps. And yes, it can happen if you do the steps, but it's very rare because there's contracts in place and attorneys in action and steps that you need to take so it doesn't happen, so you prevent it. So it's all for your safety. It's all for the intended parent's safety. So you do legal, you secure money in escrow, and the escrow company will determine how much needs to be secured before. Your contract, when you do it, it lays out so many details. What you're being compensated, what you're allowed to do, when you can travel, how the birth will go, how the relationship will go, about vaccine, termination, who's the guardian of the baby, birth order or birth certificate stuff. Everything you can think about is in that contract. And then once you complete escrow, and from the day actually contracts are signed, you can move forward with the transfer. And so then you work back with the fertility doctor, the reproductive endocrinologist, of planning for transfer, taking your IVF meds, sometimes you're on birth control, and just getting your body ready and your uterus ready to transfer that embryo. And then you're in the stage that I'm in, which is currently pregnant with someone else's baby, little embryo baby on board, which is not an embryo anymore. Oh my gosh, I can't wait. Our 12/13 week ultrasound is tomorrow. Can't wait to see how baby's doing. But from here, it's pretty quote unquote smooth sailing. Obviously you have pregnancy symptoms and labor coming soon, and so I'm just preparing for that. But all the paperwork and stuff is pretty much done. Typically your compensation will start 8 to 12 weeks gestation, and escrow will communicate, or the agency will communicate, how you get reimbursed, whether you have to request compensation or request your reimbursement, or it will automatically be deposited to your account. So you just figure that out. You'll get maternity allowance, any clothes that you need, basically anything pregnancy related or anything this journey related, your prenatals, your meds, everything will be covered, your health insurance, and that's all in contract. So you continue on with your pregnancy, you have your normal appointments, you meet with your OB, usually 10 to 12 weeks you'll graduate from your fertility clinic, which means you'll no longer see them, you'll no longer be under their care, and you will move to your OB. So you have your regular appointment